Welcome to First Alarm Family First. I'm Jen Herrera alongside Carolyn Acosta with another special guest who, Carolyn, this is kind of cool because we hooked up with Michelle really early on in the
Yeah,
First Alarm journey, if you will.
yes, we did actually. Today we're sitting down with Michelle Hernandez. She's actually a clinician who works closely with first responders. Michelle really understands the culture, the language, the stress that these guys and girls go through, the unspoken challenges. And we met with her earlier in this whole process of starting our foundation because she really has a lot of ties with first responders. Welcome, Michelle. We're so happy to have you on today.
I'm so glad. I'm glad to be here. I've seen some of your episodes and they're fantastic. And I think the awareness that you're bringing, not just to first responders, but to their families, is really, really important.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in this work?
So, the way I got specialized in PTSD is I worked for an agency called Christie House, which was they're specialized in treating only sexual abuse at that time. Now they treat different types of trauma. But for 10 years, that was my specialty. I woke up one day and decided to go into private practice. And for me, it was kind of a natural, it was a little bit seamless because I had always worked closely with first responders at Christie House. I always work closely with detectives. There's, firefighters in my family and police. And so it was very seamless for me of understanding PTSD and then learning so much about the other side of that, the military families and working with them with their children and then seeing from the inside, wait a minute, so what happens up here with the parents is also impacting the children. So for me, it was very natural to just work with the adults as well. And I really enjoy the work.
So, what do you think, having done this for so long with this specific group, what would you say is the biggest misconception? There's a lot of talk right now when it comes to first responders and mental health. A lot, even in less than a year since we've been discussing it. What do you think the biggest misconception is from people who don't fully understand what's going on with all of these first responders?
I think the misconception is that, so police and fire, we've made them out to be heroes, right? These are heroes. And so the misconception is that they don't have to ask for help. They can figure it out. And so I think that's the part that can be challenging in understanding that first responders, they need help. They aren't helping vocations, right? But also they need to ask for help and we need to know how to help them because sometimes they do ask for help and maybe a spouse doesn't understand or a colleague doesn't understand or the red tape at work is like that's nice, but we still need somebody on that truck. And that sometimes is the reality of what they're dealing with.
So, in this whole thing that me and Jen have been doing, we lost her.
Did you hear the first part of that answer?
No, I didn't. She froze.
Yeah, sometimes it's so weird because sometimes when I go back and edit, like it'll be there. So
I don't think it's here though. Because I'm not freezing.
yeah, I'm not at all. I actually have a really good signal because sometimes with like the weather, like yesterday, I was worried.
Oh my gosh, yesterday was bad. It was like
Yeah,
the middle of the storm. I'm like, oh,
I know, I know. Let me know if you want to go to the game. If you want to go with us.
okay, yeah. What time is it at? I think it's like 7, probably. I saw. Like, I'm
Yeah, we're all excited because Rocco's playing. So
awesome.
I know. My parents won't be there because my dad's surgery.
How
But
was he doing this morning?
listen, 30 minute, like at 9:50, my mom texts Kristen and I, can one of you come over? I can't get dad. I can't move dad. And Jason's at a meeting. So, okay. So anyway, so I ran over there. He's
Yeah,
recovering.
I can't even imagine the pain. Jeez.
Are we good, Michelle? No. Do you have a hotspot on your phone that you can go off of? So yeah, so I went over there. I feel bad because we're recording. I probably shouldn't say all this. I'll tell you later.
All
Are you
right. So what's giving me grief is the Wi-Fi. So I actually just took it off and now I'm just on Verizon. I'm not. So hopefully this will stick. Come on.
okay? So I'm gonna have you answer that first question I asked, and then Carolyn will jump in and ask her question because I don't think we got the first part of that.
No.
So, as far as the biggest misconception, Michelle, when people are hearing about all these first responders, understandably worried about their mental health and wanting to address it, what do you think the biggest misconception is?
So the biggest misconception I think is that they chose a vocation where they're the helpers. And so they don't necessarily understand. I think the community sometimes doesn't understand, or even family. What do you mean? You're this big, strong person who saves people every day. How could you be suffering, or how could you be going through this? And so I think creating a space where our first responder can ask for help and not feel like they have to have all the answers all the time, I think is really important.
Yeah, it's true. And me and Jen have been like working hard to like find culturally competent and vetted clinicians. How important is that, do you think, for our first responders?
I think it's crucial. So I think it's not just understanding trauma, because within trauma, there's sexual abuse, physical abuse, there's first responders, there's military, there's fire, there's police, there's dispatchers. And every one of these people is impacted by PTSD in a different way. And so I think you really have to get the proper training and understand culturally, spend time with them, do a ride along, go to a fire station, ask them for a tour, and fully understand what's going on. I don't think people even realize just the chatter. There's a constant chatter here in their ear. For police, they keep it here. For fire, it's like around, they wear it kind of like, I don't want to say a sash, but they kind of wear it like crossbody. But it's a constant chatter. And so when you think about mindfulness, of being centered, of quiet time, of, whether it's prayer, meditation, whatever you do, how do you quiet your mind when you're just used to this constant chatter from a radio that doesn't stop? And just simple things like that of, creating quiet spaces.
I love that you brought that chatter, that radio up. And I'm not comparing being a news reporter to a first responder at all. However, I will say this. I spent a lot of time on the assignment desk in my early years in the industry. And what that is they're listening to all the
I
municipalities.
think it's probably the same.
And
Yeah.
I remember it's so much, and you're hearing every single call, and some are, mundane, and then others are intense. And Jason used to laugh at me because I never wanted the radio on in the car. And he was like, why? I'm like, because I just want quiet. Because when you're inundated with that, it's so much, and it's not always positive. So I love that you brought that up. I obviously didn't handle that perhaps as well as he did. You mentioned that ride alongs, Michelle. Carolyn said it off the top. You've spent a lot of time amongst first responders, kind of embedded yourself, right, in their day to day. Do you remember is there like an aha moment or some situation where you were like, holy shit, like this is real. This is the real deal, what these men and women do?
I remember having an aha moment during a ride along when I realized the adrenaline rush, right? The moment, I did it with police. And so the moment that they pull over a car, and I remember thinking, what do you mean? You're just going to walk up to that car? I mean, you have no idea what's in that car. Is that person friendly? What are we going to find in that car? And I remember thinking, they do this without thought. And the other thing I remember thinking was, no wonder there's adrenal fatigue, because your adrenaline is constantly going. I have a lot of, this is more so, I think, with firefighters, because they actually sleep at the station. And so some of them will tell me that even when they're home, they don't sleep well, because it's a constant, is that alarm going off? Is that, and it's my understanding that now it's less abrasive than it used to be. It goes off now more like a tone, because back, a few years back, it was not that, polite. It was very abrasive of, there's a call coming in and you got to go. Now you think about in your own home, especially if you have a child and your child is crying and you're kind of jarred awake. Now imagine you're jarred awake and you got to go. I don't know what's on the other side of this call. I'm going to figure that out in the truck as I go. But now I'm quickly awake and responding to, people who are in a medically bad situation or a fire. And so it's constant. I think, police officers, they have to stay awake for their shift because it's not like the full 24. So for them, I think is a little different. And this is what I mean about when you talk about having culturally competent clinicians and even understanding these little nuances of the shift work, of their districts, of their zone or their sector or whatever they're doing. Where is their station located, right? Is it hazmat? Is it at the airport? Is it air rescue? Is it a station that's really quiet? Or is it a station that's just like a meat grinder, constantly call after call after call? It depends. That's going to influence too what your person is kind of exposed to.
That's a great point.
That's true. Michelle, what are some tools or strategies that you would have you would, tell a first responder how to manage their stress or trauma?
So I definitely think taking breaks, right? I'm a big mini vacation. We live in Florida. Go to the Keys, go to the West Coast, go to Central Florida and stay, somewhere where it's quiet, but definitely quiet.
Because Disney's not a break. I'm just kidding.
Listen, I'm a Disney person. I love Disney. We just came off a Disney cruise, but I will say, especially if you want quiet and you're a first responder, it's very peoply. There's a lot of people. And so I think when you're trying to decompress, that's not probably the best place. I think playing golf, I think doing other things and also understanding, again, whether you want to think it's the universe, or I happen to be very faith based, so that's the way I operate. But I do think understanding that this is a calling and you don't have this vocation by mistake. And so understanding that things are also done through you and that you're not going to save everybody. That's not the reality of what this work is. And even if you didn't save that person, there's a reason why that happened within that family or within that community. Like everything is so interconnected. And I think understanding that the work is done through you and using those tools of mindfulness, definitely seeking out therapy and not being ashamed to say, I think I need a break from this particular position for a minute. It doesn't make you less of a first responder or less of a person. It's just you're human. And sometimes this is a lot right now. And how else can I still continue to do my job while also taking care of myself? I think is important.
Where do you even begin though with something like that? Because, the three of us talking about not saving somebody, obviously we get that, right? We have
Yeah.
passion, but where do you even start with work getting somebody through that? Like that is their job, right? And the realistic side is you can't save everybody. So where do you start with
Yeah.
helping somebody?
So again, just creating that space where they can verbalize, like, well, why do you feel like it was your responsibility to save that person? And just unpacking that little thing. Unfortunately, I think we're seeing high incidence of suicide, and it makes me sad with guys that are retired. And it's because so your entire identity is wrapped into, but I'm a helper, I'm a first responder. So what happens when that's taken away and I have to retire? What's not taken away? You earn the right to retire. And so I think just a shift, a tiny shift in our perception and how we're analyzing or looking at a situation can be extremely helpful. Instead of focusing on the people that maybe didn't survive, think of all the lives that you've changed and the outcomes that are different because you got there in time or because you were able to change a situation. And I think that number's a lot higher than the people that you've lost. I don't think it's any different for physicians or nurses. The number of people you've saved increasingly over the years, it's just so much higher than the people that didn't make it.
And I'm glad you brought up retirement, and even like injured first responders, dealing with that new challenge now, either being retired or moved to a desk. Like, how do you help them with that transition? What do you recommend?
So I always say it's important to process what we're feeling. It's okay to feel disappointed that you're on a desk or disappointed that you're not in the position that you used to be. I also believe this may be unpopular, but again, I'm not beholden to a department because I don't work for anybody. So I'm just going to say it. It's great to have pride in the department that you work in, but you are just a number to that department. And I think that you really need to internalize I'm doing a job for my community. At the end of the day, when I retire, they're going to put someone else here. That doesn't mean that the work I did didn't matter. And it doesn't mean that because I'm at a desk job, I can't help the people around me in that setting as well. There is a communal knowledge, a tribal knowledge that police and fire have. And that gets passed down, and that's very beautiful. And so, even if you're a certain age and you have to retire, you have all this knowledge that somebody they cannot get. They could read 100 books. They're not going to get it because it takes years and years of being out on the field to learn those things. And so I think navigating that with grace and giving yourself grace of, okay, this is a different season in my life. And now I'm on this desk and I'm still impacting people, but that doesn't make me any less of a first responder, for sure.
The first responders who you work with, Michelle, those who are near retirement, maybe they're already in the drop or nearing the end of the drop.
Yeah.
do you start having those conversations like let's put something in place, not necessarily something rigid, because I know a lot of times they're like, I don't want to wake up to an alarm, I don't want to be on somebody else's timeline, but do you have those
Yeah.
conversations about like
1000%. And what is this next season of your life look like? Do you want to retire and, like you said, do you want to go work for Disney and go work? There's a lot of retirees moving to Central Florida. Do you want to volunteer for something? Is there a passion that you have that you never allowed to kind of take flight? Is this a season where you can do that? And what does that look like? And what does your identity look like? Right? This happens in marriages too, when people are going through a divorce and they go, oh, my whole identity is my spouse and my children. And so learning to kind of peel that onion and go, okay, so what else does this look like? And can you get involved in advocacy? Well, you're not on a truck anymore, but you still have a lot of knowledge. And Lord knows we need a lot of advocacy for all of our men and women in uniform. So, or do you want to go hike a mountain because you want nothing to do with first responders ever again? That's okay too. It's all okay. It's finding your way.
What would you say to like family members who want to support their, retired or injured first responder? How can they help?
Yeah, I think just asking the question, right? And actually be open to receiving what they're saying. I feel frustrated. I feel sad. What if I don't have any worth? What if after I retire, I'm just nobody? I don't wear the uniform anymore. And I think that's your job to say, well, I don't love you because of the uniform, right? Kind of love you despite that. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of missing family events. It's a lot of working around this schedule of 24 on, 48 off, or, whatever your schedule is. And so I think having the conversation of telling your spouse what they mean to you and what their worth is to you as a human being, regardless of that vocation that they chose, right? And then enjoying again, it's just a different season.
you mentioned golf when we first started talking about the whole retirement aspect. And it just made me think about something, the difference between hobbies and vices, because a lot
Oh,
of
yes.
responders have vices, a lot of in general, but it's that we see it a lot in first responders. So
Yeah.
I think there's a big distinction because, oh, having a cocktail every night, okay, that's not a hobby, that's a vice.
That's a behavior, right? That's a
Right.
behavior. And so I always say, what are we masking? Because when you're drinking, the goal is, oh, I just want to relax. Well, there's a lot of ways to relax without drinking, right? And without doing that kind of to your body. And so my question is always, what's the end game? What are we trying to do? Hopefully I create a space where they feel safe enough to say, well, I just don't want to feel any more pain, any emotional pain. All right, let's unpack that. Because the alcoholism is going to drive the people that you love away from you. And it's very much a thing. I'm just gonna have a drink. And then it starts with one and two. And then there's guilt. Oh gosh, I'm always drinking. And then it just creates other problems. And so, yeah, the drinking, the women, the gambling, the men, whatever, whatever. It's the shopping. It can be so many different vices. And so is this healthy for me or is this creating more problems for me? I always tell them, you're the only one that can answer that. And what does that look like for you? And what's your relationship with these things? Do you want to train for a marathon or do you want to drink yourself to death? You already gave your life to being a first responder. Do you want to give the ones you have left to a vice? Only they can answer that.
For those families, Michelle, or loved ones, what are some signs that a first responder might be struggling but not saying anything?
This is a tough one because there are people that can mask it very well. And so I think just having that communication, I think as a spouse or as a parent, right? You always know, when even if your children are adults, you go, something doesn't feel right here. Something's going on. And just, hey, I noticed, are you okay? You don't have to tell me what you're thinking about. You don't have to give me the details of what's giving you nightmares, but I'm noticing that you're not sleeping well. And so I'm not a first responder, but I love you. How can I help you? What can I do? And if they brush you off, no, nothing, you'll never understand. Okay, so how can I connect you with somebody that's going to understand? Or how can I just sit with you? Let's just sit on the sofa and you talk when you're ready. But I think inevitably, sometimes as a spouse, it can turn into an argument, right? You never want to talk to me. You only want to talk to your friends, or you never open up to me. That creates the other person to shut down. And so when you just say, I really want to help you. I'm worried. I see your pain. I can't imagine your pain, but I want to help you. And it's okay to ask who better than your spouse to hold your hand through that and help you. Right.
What advice? We don't always talk about this. I feel like we just because it's what we know, Carolyn, right? We've been in it for so long. But for, people in newer relationships, right? Getting into a relationship responder, are there things to consider? I mean, we get it, but what about people just starting?
I'm going to speak to two sides of this because I'm seeing it in young couples. Number two, our first responders have a habit of wanting to rescue people and can inevitably get involved in relationships where somebody is toxic or not healthy or very jealous or things of this nature. Correct? I mean, this is a double-edged sword, right? It can be the first responder who behaves this way too. But I will speak to them because they do have a habit of wanting to rescue people. And being in the wrong relationship can ruin your career. It can get you arrested, it can get you in a lot of trouble. And you need somebody who's supportive, who's healthy in their own mind also, because they need to hold that space for you as well, right? And so I think that's that side of it, right? And then the other side of that is, do you really know what you're signing up for? I know they look so good in that uniform, but girl,
So
you're
true.
gonna spend some birthdays alone and some New Year's alone and some Christmas alone. And are you built for that? Because it's not their fault. It's we don't shut down the fire station because it's Christmas Eve,
Rebirth.
right? You may have to figure out your first responder might be able to come home and lock your house up for a hurricane, but then you might be on your own because they got to go back to their station. And so, do you really fully understand what you're signing up for? And that you need to be strong within your household because there are times where you may not be there. Even for police, I know they have their regular shift, but what if they work nights? Right? Or what if they're on a specialized unit? You're in the middle of dinner and SWAT got a call. They can't be like, well, let me finish this glass of wine with my wife. Like, no, they're on call. They can't even have wine because they're on call for SWAT. So if your unit is on call that day, like it just really becomes a lifestyle. And so is it a lifestyle that you're ready for and that you're gonna embrace? I think is the biggest thing.
It's so true, Carolyn. I bet you can weigh in here. I remember I had our first daughter almost 18 years ago at the
Yeah.
same time with a coworker. And so they literally were like weeks apart. So we were always comparing stories. And right after Mackenzie was born, I was like, all right, I got to figure out this freaking carrier and we're going to Publix. And then I remember talking to my coworker and she's like telling me how her husband goes to Publix with her every time she goes and goes to all the doctor's appointments. And I'm just looking at her like, what?
Just like you really can't put a baby carrier in the back of a fire truck, so that's not gonna work at our house.
It's not happening. I'm sure, Carolyn, you have like similar stories. You
I'm
just
sure.
figure it out, but it's something to consider.
Yeah.
We're told to hold down the fort until they get back, and that's what we do. It's like you just figure it out.
Right. And it's not that that person doesn't love you. It can start to feel neglectful, but that's how do you ask someone to not do the vocation that they love and that they were called to do? That's
Exactly. No, yeah,
that's
you just learn to understand. And like you said, I didn't even think about even some of them getting with somebody who might be toxic. I didn't even think of that angle, Michelle, and which is true. I'm sure there's many of them who want to save somebody and it's actually bringing more
yeah.
to them.
Yeah. And you believe me, you're gonna get lots of drama at work. So you wanna try to minimize that in your personal life because there will be days where you'll go, was that really a call? That's the craziest thing I've ever experienced, right? And now so more so now, I feel we are constantly calling police and fire for mental health issues. And some of our departments are equipped, but they're trained to for a different job. They're not psychologists and psychiatrists. And so they really need to debrief a little bit when they come home. Yeah.
Speaking of
Sure.
debriefing, Michelle, how do you, and I remember sitting across at breakfast one morning and asking you this question. I'd love for you to share it with everybody else because you carry a lot. What you hear every day is heavy.
Yeah.
What do you do to debrief, if you will?
Yeah, so I also do court reports for kids that are coming into foster care. So I'm constantly, I hate to say it this way, but I'm constantly kind of consuming trauma, right? On a pretty regular basis. I also am guilty of getting home and going, I didn't even turn on the radio in the car. I don't want to hear anything. I just want quiet. I sit in prayer a lot. I'm a devout Catholic, and so that for me is very important. I pray a lot. I meditate, but also I'm okay with saying no and saying my caseload is full right now. I want to help, but maybe I can help in a different way. Like I mentioned, I'm very big on vacations, and they can be nice vacations or they can be let's do something on a budget. As long as it's just getting away. Like the beach for me is very important. And I like to go for a good run. Just me and the pavement and just in my mind. And I also practice a deep gratitude. I'm very grateful for our first responders, for their families. I'm grateful that I'm able to do the work that I can do. And I do call on friends and say, you know, I don't know, kind of having a rough day. I had a rough case. Can we grab lunch? My son's been at the same school since he was in pre-K 4. And my moms at the school are just, they're just really supportive, and family, and you have to find people, and you can't be afraid to be vulnerable is the biggest. Yes, I am the therapist, but sometimes I don't have the answer, and sometimes I also need to turn off,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the biggest. I say with first responders it's hard because they're out there in the field, and so they can drive by a place and go, there was an accident here, there was somebody over there was a shooting over there. And so it's always kind of in their community. And so I feel like for them, they have to work double time to really try to stay centered and not have those intrusive memories kind of always with them.
If you could leave every first responder and their families with one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would tell them, gosh, the work that you do matters, and you matter. And even if a department has made you feel like you're replaceable or that your mental health is getting in the way of your job, you absolutely matter, and you're loved. And you have chosen a vocation where you personally have made a difference in the world, whether you realize it or not. Because they don't often get somebody that comes back to the station and says, thank you. You changed the course of my life. Because of you, I decided to be a first responder. Because of you, I reassessed my marriage, my children, my relationship with work, because I had a near death experience. So I think really understanding that the good that they do in the world, despite sometimes the red tape at work. And for families, thank you as well. Because you also make such a huge sacrifice. It's not just your person. You're along for that ride. You fell in love with somebody that chose this vocation. And so helping them understand that there are so many people in the community that are grateful for them and the work that they do.
And I think right there is a perfect way to wrap things up. It's a perfect message. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us here on First Alarm Family First.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
And yeah, no, this has been great. I've kind of like a full circle moment from when it all started. We always remind everybody, if you guys see something, to sound the alarm.
Save a life.